Hi everyone, it's Alyssa and this is Always Cinema Chic, and today I'm going to review Hillbilly Elegy directed by Ron Howard. The movie stars Glenn Close, Amy Adams, and Gabriel Basso, and this movie was such a disappointment, though maybe not disappointment because I didn't expect to like it necessarily. I wanted to like it because I do like some Ron Howard movies. He is a little bit up and down with how much I like his films, but this movie was just bland. If I could just say it in one word, there was nothing that stood out about this movie. There was nothing that attached me to any of the characters. It just felt really bland, which is crazy because Amy Adams is one of my top three favorite actresses. So the movie is actually a memoir by JD Vance. I never read the memoir. I know there is some controversy surrounding it, but for the purposes of this, I'm really just reviewing the movie and what I saw in the movie because I don't know what the memoir was like. So the film jumps back and forth in time, and you see JD when he's a young boy. He spends summers in Kentucky. Then he grows up most of his childhood in Ohio. And then you see him in the future where he is a Yale law student. And all of a sudden he's around all of these elite type people and he doesn't fit in, but he's a really hard worker and he has 3 jobs and he sort of gets himself up by the bootstraps and goes from a really bad socioeconomic background to making something of himself. And he has to deal with his mother, who is a drug addict and an alcoholic, and there's a sister, and he has his grandmother who inspires him to be a better person. And that's sort of it. That's the movie. There's nothing else. There was no deeper meaning. There was nothing really going on. So I'm gonna start with the positives because I always like to start with the positives. And I will say that I had a hard time actually finding positives. And it's not because the movie is just a bad movie, because sometimes I think a bad movie is easy to review because you can really pull apart what makes it bad. But this was just such an okay movie that it almost makes it difficult to review in a sense, because it wasn't the worst thing that I've seen in 2020. It most definitely was not the best. But if I were to pull something out from this film, I think it would be Glenn Close's performance as the grandmother. At first, I kind of thought the performance was maybe a little bit over the top because you see her with these very oversized t-shirts with, the American flag, and her hair is really crazy and the glasses are super big. And you're just like, is this what the woman was actually like? But then, of course, because it's a memoir, they show pictures at the end. And yes, that's exactly what the grandmother looked like. That's how she walked, very kind of like hunched over and, but at first I was a little like, oh, is she really going over the top with it? But then when they showed that, I thought, okay, that's what she was like. So I think she really gets into the character, and it doesn't necessarily feel like you're watching Glenn Close in a performance. She definitely vanishes into that character. And I did want more, though, from the writing. I wanted more in terms of maybe her background. You get little glimpses into her marriage when she was younger, but everything is just so quick. And there are so many relationships in the movie that you don't give any time to anything. So it just kind of felt like you kind of were breezing through certain elements of the film. Now, there was one moment, and I know this is weird because it was literally 15 seconds of the film, but it was by far my favorite part, and it was right in the beginning of the movie. So I thought, oh, maybe this actually will be good because it was a little bit creative. And so the family spends summers in Kentucky in this house, and there's a sequence where you see pictures from generation to generation to generation, and you see it going back, how this particular family has owned this house in Kentucky for what appears to be hundreds of years, and the family all congregates back there just to kind of meet up. And I thought, oh, I love this idea of connection, and it made me think of the title. So Hillbilly Elegy, it's a mourning of the dead, it's a reflection. And so I thought this was going to be more of a reflection of all of the generations past and how this family is in sort of a poverty type level. And, the grandma did not have enough money for food for her and her grandson. And so I thought it was going to be something where we look back in terms of multi-generations. And it really wasn't that. And that one moment in the film, I was like, oh, this is actually really creative. And then from there, it just kind of went into everything being bland. So those were the two things that I took away as being positives from the film. But most everything else is either a negative or a neutral or, just okay. And so I'm going to start with Amy Adams' performance. She plays Bev, the mom, and Amy Adams is without a doubt one of my favorite actresses. When I think of American Hustle, Sharp Objects, I never watch TV shows. So for me to watch a TV show, because I'm so obsessed with this actress and will just watch literally anything that she's in, and that show was amazing. And I loved the book as well. But this movie, I felt like the character wasn't genuine. And I don't think that's really her fault necessarily, because the writing just wasn't there. She just has breakdown after breakdown after breakdown, and there's nothing explaining really where she came from. Now, yes, there's like one scene where you see her as a kid in the past, but it wasn't enough for me to understand the character. And part of the problem is you're seeing the movie from the boy's eyes. So he never truly understands his mother. And so what we see are just these very superficial breakdowns from Amy Adams, where I didn't really know where they were coming from. And I felt like if the writing were better and there was a little bit more meat and authenticity in that character, she just felt like the idea of a mom who has drug problems and alcoholism and all of these incredibly serious topics that you could really delve into and get such great emotional depth. But it just wasn't there for me. And that breaks my heart. Now, she wasn't terrible. I wouldn't say, oh, this was bad acting. This just wasn't very good for her. If she gets nominated for any kind of Academy Award for this, I mean, that just speaks to what 2020 has been. It's just nothing about this movie is that good. And I know I will never watch it again. And I don't usually say that about movies. I always have the possibility that like, oh, I'll watch this sometime. There'll be a moment where I really like it. Not the case with this movie. And here's where it was the worst part. And I actually feel bad saying this because I don't like speaking poorly about child actors. I mean, you're in such a weird situation, but the boy who played the young JD was actually bad. Like I had a very difficult time watching him on screen because he'd be making these sort of like surprised faces in every scene of the movie. I'm like, kid, you cannot be surprised at every single moment of this movie. He had like one emotion, surprise, and occasionally anger. And that was it. I was like, oh my God. And for that, I really don't blame the child. I blame Ron Howard, which also kills me because he's such a nice person and he works so hard on his films. I know he does. It just didn't work. But watching this kid, every scene this kid was in, and he was in it quite a bit. I had to start looking away because I couldn't take how bad the acting was. Like it was a little intense for me. And the other thing that really bothered me was the camera angles and movements. To me, this felt like a movie from maybe the early 2000s, mid 2000s. It was so dated feeling. I felt like I was watching a movie that was made maybe 15 years ago, and it was trying to be edgy for that time. There's one shot also in the beginning where the camera is at the feet, the pedals of a bicycle, and it's just very, shaky looking. And I thought, oh my God, this is really bad. This is like old 2000 cheesy, trying to be something, trying to be edgy, but it just failed in every way. And there were a lot of moments where he's using kind of a shaky camera, and it just didn't call for it. This was a very traditional story. And so in that sense, if you're telling a very, very traditional story, I almost want it to be more classic techniques in filmmaking. You don't need to try new things. Like, please, Ron Howard, don't try these new things. And I love some of his old movies. I love Willow. That is just such a great movie from my childhood. And I feel like he's been a little bit more up and down with some of the newer films, and all of the Angels and Demons and Inferno, the whatever Dan, whatever his name is, those books. I could literally care less about those movies, but I know he's a guy who cares, and it was just really difficult to watch this. The guy who plays the older JD, Gabriel Basso, he was fine. He wasn't great. He wasn't a standout, but he wasn't bad either. He wasn't annoying me. He didn't have a constant look of surprise on his face. So that was definitely a positive. And he was in the movie Kings of Summer when he was a little kid. So he definitely looks a lot older. But everything about this just was exactly what you expect it to be. So there's just so many relationships that you're seeing between characters, between the sister and her own difficulties, and then the mom, and then the grandma, and how the grandma helps JD to sort of make something of his life, and he sees how hard she struggled and the work that she's put in, and he kind of wants to make her proud. It is just that. There's nothing really that's going beyond that level of the story. And there's all these characters that, it's a little bit of everything, and it's all nothing really, because it doesn't turn into anything that is that interesting. And I won't say the ending, but the ending felt so anticlimactic to me, because it is based on a real person's life, and life doesn't always end in a really dramatic way. The story doesn't always end in such a dramatic way. And this absolutely did not. I was like, oh, wait, it's over? This is it? This is the movie? Okay. All right. I saw that. It's over. So for me, this was a C movie. It wasn't bad. It wasn't offensive. It didn't make me hate everything about filmmaking, but there was nothing that was really interesting in this movie to me. So I know it's not the best review, but I got to be honest with this one. So I would love to hear what you guys think. I mean, the movie is currently on Netflix, and as of me filming this right now, I believe it's number 2. So definitely people are watching this. So if you have seen the movie, I would love to know what you think about it. If you liked it, if you didn't like it. If you haven't, please subscribe to the channel, because it definitely helps out. And please hit that thumbs up because I would just really appreciate it. So I hope everyone has a great day, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye, guys.